Hi everyone, welcome back to my kitchen for the next episode of the Flavors of Fall. So we're in my kitchen and right now we're actually at my dining table because I thought with this episode I would give you a little history lesson along with a cooking lesson. So sit down for a second and listen to my story of the Great Boston Molasses Explosion, or flood as they called it. One of the components of the what we're making today is molasses. And if you don't come from the New England area, you may not have ever heard of this occurrence. And even if you do and you're not of a generation old enough to have been heard it through your mothers and grandmothers, you probably have never heard of it either, or may not have ever heard of it. But the story goes like this, and it's not the story, it's a fact. In 1915, a munitions company in Massachusetts contracted to have a large tank installed down by the docks in the north end of Boston. And that large tank was about 50 feet tall and was going to be used to house molasses. And the molasses came in from the Caribbean, most of it from Cuba, or a lot of it from Cuba. And it would go into this holding tank and then would be piped to their company in Cambridge, the munitions company. You see, molasses was not being used to make rum or cook or bake with. Molasses was being used to create munitions, explosives. And of course in 1915, the beginning of the World War I, and the whole world seemed to be at war, there were a lot of buyers for these explosives. So believe it or not, the molasses was being broken down to its chemical components to create explosives. About 20% of it was formulated into alcohol to create rum, but 80% was used for munitions. So in 1915, that tank was built, very poorly built under the supervision of an accountant with no construction background, and built in a hurry in order to meet the contractual deadline. It was sort of like 3 rings on top of each other and then riveted together. So anyway, shortly after this was completed and they started utilizing it, it was noticed that this tank leaked, and it would leak by the rivets. And you could tell because there was brown streaks running down the tank. And the neighborhood children or adults used to complain about it, but also used to go along and gather up the molasses that had seeped out of the tank to take home to use in their homes. So what happened is about 4 years later, January 15th, actually, of 1919, a large shipment of molasses had just come in from Cuba and had been put on in the tank. And this new molasses had been put on top of the old molasses, and they started to interact with each other because of a temperature gradient. And shortly, about noontime, it began to make this horrendous noise, and rivets started popping out, and immediately thereafter the tank exploded. Now this was a 50-foot tall tank. It carried 2.3 million gallons of molasses. Now that created a 15-foot wall of molasses. Think of a tsunami of molasses. And it was traveling at 35 miles an hour. So the old saying, traveled as slow as molasses, was not quite the case at this point in time. So during that time in the North End, that explosion killed 21 people and injured 150 people, many of them with serious injuries and lifelong injuries. It also killed numerous horses because that was a mode of transportation, and there was a lot of them in that area. It was a commercial area and a residential area right along the wharf in the harbor. So anyway, before we get over to make the bread we're going to make today, gingerbread, which one of the components of gingerbread is molasses, I thought I'd give you a little upfront of what happened with molasses in Boston in 1919. So I will take you now over to the counter and we'll get busy using our non-fermented molasses and make a gingerbread. I'll be right back and show you the ingredients you'll need. See you in a bit. Okay, here are the ingredients we're going to need. We're going to need all-purpose flour, baking soda, salt, cinnamon, ginger, allspice, sugar, an egg, a stick of butter, molasses, and of course some spray for the pan. Now, yes, you can go to the grocery store and you can buy a box of gingerbread mix. But it's really a very simple recipe and something that I would imagine a great many of us have in the house right now. So it's just as easy to put this together in a snap. And what I mentioned the other day is you will just not believe how good your house will smell when this gingerbread is cooking. It makes you want to wrap Christmas presents. All right, I'm going to just get busy here, and I'm going to start by spraying my pan. And I'm just going to be using some cooking spray. Okay, but it also needs to be floured, so we're going to flour it. All right, and we'll set that aside. Okay, so now I'm going to move you over so you can get closer to the mixer and see what is happening. All right, I'm going to start with my 1 stick of butter. And I'm going to try not to keep banging the side of the bowl because I noticed I did that and it makes a lot of noise. And a 1/2 cup of sugar. Now I'm going to cream this, and if it gets too loud I'll just mute this part of the video. To that mixture I'm going to add an egg. All right, the next thing I'm going to add is the molasses, and I'm going to add 1 cup of molasses. Now with molasses or honey or any of those viscous things, you want to spray your cup first. And we'll fill this up with molasses. And that's my oven. You hear it has just preheated. See if I can move this down a bit. because it takes a while to get molasses out of a jar. I'm going to use the new one, but I'll tip that one upside down while I'm doing it. Love molasses. Whoops. Pour in the molasses. And you see by spraying the cup that it's just about all out of there. It's just not out of there because I can't tip it up quite enough. All right. Let me just get this cleaned down. You know, these feeders are great, but they don't get all the way to the bottom sometimes. I know they have, or the sides. I know they have some that have a little scraper thing on the sides. I don't have that one. Okay, so now we've got that in. Now we're going to do some dry ingredients. Okay, now we'll put in the dry ingredients. I'm going to put in 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to put them in a bowl here. If you have a sifter, it would be good to sift in case you have any lumps in your flour. That's 2. And a half. All right, to that we're going to add 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. And I forgot to take these little caps off before I got started. Now one thing with this, and I'm going to use good heaping. Okay, you can see it's pretty good. If you've not made this before, I would make it according to the directions and the recipe. But then you can always adjust these spices to fit your taste. The next one is a teaspoon of ground ginger. Now if you like the ginger flavor, you can add more ginger. Some people even add crystallized ginger, cut up into very tiny little pieces. And a half a teaspoon of ground cloves. The cloves is very strong. I mean, it smells good already just with putting these spices in. I also need 1½ teaspoons of baking soda. One. And a half. Now the last thing I'm going to need is hot water. So I'm going to take my molasses cup and fill it with water. And I'm going to put it in the microwave about a minute and see how hot. Doesn't have to be boiling, just needs to be hot. Okay, now the only other thing I need to put in here is a half a teaspoon of salt. Now I don't have a sifter, so I'm just going to go through this with my whisk, and that'll break up any lumps and kind of mix it together. And that's all there is to the mixing. Okay, let's put this on again. And while it's on low, I'm going to begin to add this. Right. Sorry. Let me give it a quick scrape down. With the water. And I'm going to lift this up out of my way so I don't spill the water all over me. You have to turn it on very slow because I put all that water in at once. And it's going to make quite a loose batter, very liquidy. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Get that out of the way. Let me just wipe my hands off. And now we're going to pour this batter into the pan. Easy peasy. This is, it calls for a 9-inch square pan. I think mine is 8, so it may take a little bit longer to cook. One second. There, my hands were slippery. So there you go. I'm going to put this in the oven. It says it should cook for about 1 hour. I'm going to check it probably about 40 minutes until a toothpick in the middle comes out clean. So I'll be back when this comes out of the oven. In the meantime, we're just going to sit around and smell. Be right back in a bit. Well, there you go. Hot out of the oven. This took 50 minutes. I checked it at 40 and I put another 10 in. Now I'm going to try to get a piece out here so you can see. But it's still really hot, so it's supposed to cool in the pan a while. See if I can do it without wrecking it too badly. Oh, okay. I wish I had smell-o-vision. There we go. Look, almost. Oh. Okay, now I'm going to take just a very little bite because I'm not really eating this kind of thing right at the moment. But I think it's only fair that you know if it's any good. Mmm. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. Now, you'd serve this probably with whipped cream or ice cream. But I tell you what, growing up, I used to like it, after it got cold, I'd have it with butter on it for breakfast. Delicious. I think I'm going to go sing some Christmas carols. So I'll sign off until Tuesday. Until then, have a great Sunday. Stay safe. Play by the rules. Keep your distance. Wear your mask. Take a deep breath. And everybody play nice now. I'll see you Tuesday. Love you. Bye-bye.